So that was the overview for episodes 1 and 2. Just the overall visuals, the tone, music, stylistically, the acting, all of that. Now I want to go storyline by storyline on the first 2 episodes with the specifics. And I'm going to go Galadriel, Elrond, then Khazad-dûm, then the Harfoots, then the Southlands. Well, before Galadriel, I'm going to do the prologue, because it's sort of its own story unto itself. Diving in here, I've seen a lot of fan sites picking apart the prologue and fan channels of, did they simplify too much lore in this? I don't think they did, because this will be a constant tension on this show, is do you give too much exposition or too little for a general audience? That it's not just for the hardcore book fans, and I sympathize that the writers are dropping a lot of Easter eggs to try to appease the book fans, and that's nice. And I am a hardcore book fan, but at the same time, I'm going, if the general audience wouldn't know what that is, you shouldn't put it in. That it flavors it a little, but if you either introduce it in simplified form and then expand it, or don't say who it is at all. Like, I wouldn't put a line about the 9 cats of Queen Beruthiel, which was a side joke in The Lord of the Rings. You don't put that in, it would confuse people, it wasn't even important. Nor would I say, yes, I knew Fingolfin, and then leave no explanation for who Fingolfin was. That you need to work that out. So, overall, with the prologue, it was a lot of the issues I remember from Fellowship of the Ring, actually, the 7-minute prologue they had, that, if you think they simplified this too much, I remember, I was an angry, teenager going, oh man, they cut out so much stuff from the prologue, they didn't even say who Gil-galad and Elendil were by name. And I was stupid, because then in the commentary track when it came out, they explained, originally we did do that, and it brought the story to a grinding halt. You can't just have a prologue name-dropping who everyone was. Our original prologue even said the name of Gil-galad's spear, Aeglos. Why? This is meant to be an introduction. There's an art to making an introduction. Things are supposed to be simplified. And fundamentally, this is a story about the Second Age, not the First Age, so they shouldn't go into too much detail about who Morgoth was. Just that, well, he was the first Dark Lord, and we fought a big war against him, and almost everyone lost because it was a devastating cost. This is one of those things where, as a book reader, I thought it was fine because it's supposed to be simplified, and I'm really curious what other people who didn't read the books think about, well, who is Morgoth, and what's Valinor, and what are the 2 trees? All of that. That one of those points, again, where I said sometimes it reached the point where it's 8 out of 10. Like, the child Galadriel was pretty good. Her seeing the 2 trees in Valinor, for a moment I thought this was flashing back to Lake Cuivianen, which is literally Elf Eden. But no, it was the 2 trees, it was Valinor, it was nice that we saw that. And, like I said, there's times when the dialogue actually goes from average to good and iconic. One of the few of those was the Galadriel prologue. There was a voiceover. There was a time when the world was so young that there had not yet been a sunrise, but even then there was light. And then it pulls back to the 2 trees, and the awe of that, really, it felt like that. But would people pick up on what that is? For those of you just joining us, let me try to dive in here really quickly on, did they explain what the 2 trees are well enough? The short version is, Tolkien was a staunch Catholic, and the Judeo-Christian God does exist in Middle-earth. It's not fantasy gods and stuff. He was putting his faith into this and his views on the world, but it's in ancient times. And the way he reconciled that with, like, he was a real fan of Norse myth and stuff, and Viking myth and Anglo-Saxon stuff, is he said, well, in Middle-earth, the world was made by the Judeo-Christian God called Eru, which means the One. And he set up a council of archangels to rule over the world on a day-to-day basis, to run things. These archangels are called the Valar, V-A-L-A-R. And there were 15 of them, this Council of Archangels. Regular angels are just called Maiar. Maiar spirits, angels, exactly what it sounds like. But the 15th, one of these 15 archangels rebelled against God, seeking the power of creation for himself. That's who Morgoth was. He is literally Satan. That is a direct, it's in Tolkien's subcreation, as he said, in his secondary world, this is the form Satan took. That Eru is the Judeo-Christian god in a lost historical era. Middle-earth is meant to be our planet just thousands of years ago in a lost historical era. And he said just in the mists of time after Noah or something that Morgoth rebelled against God and he lost. And in his version of things, the Valar, there wasn't a sun and moon originally even. That the way it worked was at the dawn of time, to light the world, this council of archangels set up these two trees that emanated light. One was golden, one was silver. And it emanated light, which was like the holy light of God. That you think sunlight, moonlight, hurts evil things. Light is goodness. The good light comes from God. And the two trees were just, and I like how they do that, where you can't even see that close to them in the shot they gave. That's just everything is bathed in holy light in Valinor from the two trees where they lived on the western continent. Morgoth, who had turned evil, came and destroyed the two trees with the help of this giant spider demon Ungoliant. They leave that out, it'll be too much detail. So the two trees are gone. Then how do they light the world? Well, the sun and moon were made from the last fruit of the two trees. And that's something like sunlight burns orcs. But they say it's the sun is a pale shadow of the waves of holy light that you felt when the two trees were there. And the younger generations of elves who grew up in Middle-earth, who were born there, like Arwen, they weren't as powerful. The Galadriel is one of the really magically powerful ones, because she's one of the last of the originals, the ones who were born in Valinor. And I like that they had a line of that where she mentions, I remember feeling the light of the two trees on my face. That the books mention that simply having been in the presence of the two trees when they were alive, Galadriel radiates magic. That you can just see that she looks and feels. It's not like some cheap trick, some cheap magic thing. It's just she looks more real, more saturated. That the light of the two trees is on her face in a way that you can't really describe. And that she looks inherently powerful and ethereal, I guess is the word you'd use. And they talk about this a bit in the second episode, that Feanor was an elf smith, the greatest elf smith ever, who was able to capture the light of the two trees in these three jewels called the Silmarils. And the Silmarils were indestructible. So when Morgoth wanted to destroy the light of goodness in the world, he destroyed the two trees, but he couldn't destroy the Silmarils, so he stole them instead. Next best thing, and he stole them and retreated to his fortress in Middle-earth, Angband. Whereas Mordor is in the south, and it's volcanic and stuff, Morgoth, well, he did have a volcano, but Angband is in the frozen north. It's been destroyed now, it sank into the sea, but the hell is ice. What's the opposite of life is cold and death. So he fled to Angband, it's in this subcontinent that doesn't exist anymore, and they fought over it for a long time, trying to get the jewels back. They ended up getting lost, but at least they defeated Morgoth. Again, this is too much to put into a prologue. You see me rambling here. I don't know if people could pick up on what were the two trees just from that, other than he's the bad guy and he destroyed these beautiful tree things that were clearly radiating light and beauty in where Valinor is. Tell me in the comments, did they convey enough? The gist of it, that Morgoth attacked, destroyed the light of their home, and they tried to go and fight him off. And they show briefly the War of Wrath, the final battle against him, which lasted for years. Like, you just see one fell beast attacking an eagle. It's not the story of the first age. They're here to tell the story of the second age. They're just showing glimpses of it to tease it. And I'm fine with this. Making a prologue is hard. I'm just saying, for the people who are saying it didn't include enough of the lore, how the hell could it? It would be information overload. Then again, what you do introduce, you need to introduce coherently. That, well, there's two trees, and they were destroyed, and they were like, before there was a sun and moon, this is like Eden, almost. This is paradise. It is a tightrope walk, and I think they managed to do a decent job. I would not have put more lore in, but what they did put in, did they convey that well? I like to think they did. So please tell me in the comments, did they get that right for you? I mean, obviously, if you're unfamiliar with the source stuff of the Silmarillion, did you kind of get that this is the light of goodness that he destroyed with the two trees? And yes, this is why the tree is a symbol of Gondor, and why in trailers we see another tree in Numenor, that they took cuttings from the two trees, they were normal trees. They weren't radiating light and stuff, but they were white and gold. And the elves, as a gift, gave a seedling of one of the trees to the Numenorians. And it became the symbol of Numenor, the tree of the king there. Then they took a cutting of that tree, Nimloth, which they took to Middle-earth, to Gondor, and became the white tree of Gondor. So it's the descendant of the descendant of the descendant of the tree, the first tree, which was the holy light of God before there was a sun and moon in Eden, basically. So it's nice that they put that in. We'll see more of that in episode 3 when I get to it. But the tree symbol is important in everything, and I hope they set that up. So thinking on the prologue, there's only so much they can do. I don't think they legally have the rights to the name Finrod, her older brother. I don't think they have the rights to his name. That's why they don't mention it. And I understand completely it's beyond their control. And that was the other thing, that in broad strokes they said, that was genuinely accurate, where Finrod sought out Sauron and he killed him. That's what happened. It's actually in the middle of the war he sought out Sauron during a quest and engaged him in single combat. It's this highlight of the story of Beren and Luthien, this whole other story in there. He helps the main hero, he fights off Sauron, and he gets an epic magical duel with him, and he ends up being killed. So yes, that happened in the books, that Sauron killed Galadriel's brother in personal combat. And that they mentioned that she isn't just, I talked about this in earlier videos, that she's not just, I'm seeking revenge because my brother died in the war, but very specifically, Sauron killed him in personal combat. And people going, she's revenge crazy for this. Well, they're extrapolating, but there are more in-depth lore channels will cover this, that, there's quotes in the book saying she didn't want to leave Middle-earth for Valinor, because she said, we never really caught Sauron, he's still out there. Our task isn't finished. So they're extrapolating, they're moving things around, but it's not some giant invention. That if they had her as just, I must seek revenge, that would be weird. But it's understated enough. It's general, understandable emotion of Sauron is still out there. I know personally how dangerous he is. Evil doesn't sleep, it waits. That I have felt the pain of that. And the whole thing with the elves in Lindon, that they have lost a lot of people and don't want to waste more people just searching for the orcs who might not even be there. But I'll get to that. Point is, a prologue needs to be new user friendly. I wouldn't have put more lore in for people complaining. They cut so much out. I'm like, I would put in enough that I could tell it was coherent to someone unfamiliar with the source material. So I'm siding with the new viewers on this. Did you comprehend? Did it make enough sense that, there's two trees and they attack them? I don't know. I'm going to split this off here into its own separate video. I'm recording this as a series now, but I wanted to draw attention to the prologue. That I thought it was a good prologue. I would not have overburdened everyone with more exposition, but did you feel it needed clarification if you haven't read the books? And one closing thought. I'm pretty certain that when we see child Galadriel fighting that jerk kid who destroys her boat, and then they start grappling on the ground, Raise your hand in the comments if you thought that that jerk kid who was fighting her was young Feanor. Because it says in the book that from an early age, among the princes and princesses of the High Elves, that the greatest among them were Feanor, who became the greatest elfsmith ever, and faction leader among them, and Galadriel, he was enamored of Galadriel, but she spurned him because she could see the arrogance and evil in his heart, and stuff like that. So, I don't know. I looked up the cast. I don't think that kid was explicitly called Feanor, but I'm 90% he was, and as headcanon, I like to think he was Feanor. What do you think? I'm going to split this off, moving on from this to the storyline by storyline thing.